who should I invite next? Who do you think I should,
There are
invite?
a lot of people that came to mind, but the one that I want to put forward is Joanne Stone. So Joanne is an agile coach. Oh, look, there
That's
she is, Joanne Stone. That's so great. So she's an agile coach. She's in Canada, and she is hosting a series of conversations, and she's pulling together a community really around what we were just talking about. Hers is called
mm,
Wicked and Agile. It's like, what is the intersection of wicked problems and agility? Is the like the terrain that group thinks about and talks about. And what's really cool is that she is interviewing people outside the agile world, people who already
oh,
work in wicked problems, like a 911 operator who works in like when there's a disaster and they pull operators, 911 operators. 911 is like the emergency number in the US.
yeah, yeah.
And they pull these
I know,
operators
but maybe
together.
not everybody else knows it. Indeed.
Yeah. So like she's interviewed her, and she's interviewed people who are working in healthcare crisis and other things like that, to just find out how are you already working with your wicked problem, so that we can now
Hmm.
consider as agilists, like, what do we have to offer? Like, let's not presume that we that we have
That we
something
have
to
a
offer,
solution.
but like, let's investigate it. Let's let the empirical process work here, and let's do it with a lot of joy in our hearts, because who knows what we can discover.
And learn from well, and
Yeah,
imagine people who are doing disaster recovery or whatever disaster helping out, they have lots of skills that they can bring us as well, I think.
absolutely.
I
Yeah,
think that's and yeah, for me, agile is a world where we've have always been good at capturing what's happening around us and learning from it, and we should keep doing this.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Sometimes we try to sell it as we invented it, and then I don't like that part. We should be much more telling about what are our sources and where we're learning it, but we're really good at seeing what's happening.
We are.
Um, and I like indeed when I looked on her website the words she's using, the wicked kind of thing. It's I like it because it's indeed. I think, well, even me as a non-native speaker, I immediately have some kind of image of what that kind of thing is. So that is like. Hello. This week's interview is with Joanne Stone. She has a special definition of retirement. We talked about creating space for me time as a parent, about the work we both do to understand ourselves to be better able to help others, about using agile tools with our children, and finally, the different roles that she has learned how to play. I'm Yves Hanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello, everyone, and welcome. And I'm here today with Joanne. Hello, welcome, Joanne.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, and I want to, before we start, immediately show the people where, because this is all remote, and so I am recording from Belgium, and so you can see here somewhere where I am, and if I find the, can I click on it? Yes, we should be able to move virtually thanks to Google to where Joanne can be found. And Joanne is somewhere in Canada, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, just east of Toronto. That's pretty close.
So we are virtually, and for just for understanding, I'm recording this at it's 20 minutes past 5. And what time is it on your side?
It's 20 minutes past 11. Yeah.
In the morning, and
Yeah,
in
yeah,
here it's in the evening. Just
yeah.
to show people a little bit, this is what remote working is doing these days. Remote conversations that we're having. Thanks to all the tools that we have, we're able to do that. So my day has already gone, my working day. So I'm almost ready to go into the weekend because it's Friday and you still have a working day ahead of you, something like that. So welcome. Um, Before we jump into all the questions, maybe Joanne, say a little bit about who you are, what do you want people to know about you?
Oh, so that's such a wonderful question.
Yeah, sorry, I should have warned you up front
No,
that this
no,
is.
it's good. I mean, we should be able to answer that, right? Who am I? Oh, good question. So I'll have to first start off with I love doing this, but it's like I am a very proud mother for beautiful girls. So I have to sit there and say, I love, as I would say to a lot of my groups, I love babies, I love kids, I love so. And I came from a very large group of a very large group. It's funny, family of six. So but what do I do? I mean, it's like I have this passion about creating great teams and where people feel like they belong and they're doing something that matters. I'm also a really big community builder. And so I've got a community that I have in Toronto. And I am a leadership coach too. So I have like coaching experience as well. But my background is mainly I came from I'm a software developer, right? And then I came into this field of agile. So I am currently working in large transformations,
Mhm.
and I have lots of little projects which are going on, right? And so I have a new project which I'm building, which we'll talk about in a little while. But yeah, that's sort of me and what I do, and I feel like I've retired like 10 years ago because I'm doing stuff that I love, right? So which is wonderful.
Mhm. So you're
Yeah,
retired, but you're doing the stuff that you. I like the way you
and I get
you.
paid.
Yeah, so that's probably a different kind of definition of retirement, but yes, I was intrigued when you started saying I'm coming from a large family, and
Yeah,
the reason why I'm intrigued is because that's how my mother introduced herself to my father, and she was saying I'm coming from a large family, and she meant, well, I have we are a family of seven, which is more or less the same size as you are, and my
yeah.
father is coming from a family of 17, so for him, seven was small. And so it's like, I was like expecting, okay, what should I now expect? Like a 7 or 17, or what is it? So,
That's funny.
so
Yeah, it's really quite relative, right? Yeah, it's a funny
exactly.
story.
So it really depends on what your frame, and if you have just one or two children, then six is a lot. For me,
Yeah,
that's definitely a lot. I have three children, but if you're coming from a background with 17, and I,
yeah.
for example, I've done workshops together with my father, and I remember still one
Wow.
time where we had like a group of 17 people around us, and he literally said
Yeah.
like this is how breakfast was for me. And I was
Oh,
looking around, was like, wow, okay, that's a different kind of breakfast than we were having.
yeah, I'm sure yeah, I could probably share some stories with you. I mean, it was just like seconds, like you had your first there's no seconds when you're doing Sunday dinners or anything like that, right? You got everything on that first one. If you thought you were coming back for seconds, just all the good stuff was always gone. But my family
He was
had
the youngest, so exactly. So my father is the quickest eater that I've ever encountered, and about everybody that, and that's for
yeah,
exactly that reason.
yeah,
You go
yeah,
once and that's it. If you don't eat fast, he had to go. That's basically the way
yeah.
to survive in a large family like that. So
Oh,
that's it.
it's true. I mean, in my family, it's pretty unique where my mother had two sets of twins. So the way I explain it is there's the single, the double, the single, and the double. And she had identical twins and non-identical twins. So I was part of the
She
non-identical twins. So I
really
have a
had
twin
she had
brother.
really everything. So
She did.
that's
Yeah.
wow.
Three
That's
girls, three boys, the Brady Bunch. It was a pretty interesting yeah, it was fun.
pretty amazing. And we can keep talking about that, but we're not here for that.
Oh,
But it's
yeah, yeah.
already immediately already into getting to know each other at multiple levels. And
Yeah.
my mouse is not helping me. Where is it? So yeah, what I wanted to go into that very first question of
Yeah.
what is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced in who you are.
I love this question because there's like, oh my gosh, which one? Which one? Um, so I always love sharing stories, but I will sit there and say probably one of the things that influenced me hugely was I, I, I almost want to say it's almost like being a middle child.
Mhm.
But that's not the fun story. But the fun story, if I'll call it the fun story, was I sing. I was part of a Sweet Adeline group. It's a barbershop group. Um,
Mhm.
and the barbershop group, we would go on stage, right? And we would go on stage and we do the performance and all that stuff. So I actually was singing quartet, and it was actually beautiful with a bunch of women and everything like that. And then eventually I actually became a director of the group. So our
Mm.
assistant director. So I would have to, stand up on stage and direct the group and everything like that. And I don't have a huge musical background, right? So it's not a lot of fun. But I was on this particular stage in all of my glory of being 8 months pregnant and very, very big. So I had a presence. I looked like I was carrying twins. And directing the group while they were doing I Am Woman, which was hilarious because I was really
Because
woman at that point in
woman.
time.
That's a very big definition of being a woman, yes, in that sense.
And I have to sit there and say, like, this was the opportunity where how it influenced me is, being part of the big family. You're sort of lost, like you're not like there. You're just part of this big group, but
Mhm.
going out there and being part on stage, for example, and it was you had to show up, right? You really
Mm.
had to show up when you're on that stage. And there's an aspect of showing up on the stage, which was great. And there's an aspect of doing something I really loved, which was singing and listening to the harmony of the rest of the group, and then just playing with the music, right? And seeing how I can direct a group, right? And it was just that it made me, it's just one of those things where you could feel this huge impact, right? And you're just flowing in the moment. Yeah, I would say, it reminds me of just letting go of everything too. Like once you get on that stage, you forget about everything else. So it also
You
helps me
go
let
with the
go.
flow because yeah, whatever happens, it happens, and you have to just move on and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's so many things, like when you're if you're part of a band or whatever, no one knows you're off key by a little bit, right? Like only the really trained ear may know. But yeah, you just kind of go. Yeah. So that was another lessons learned that kind of brings me forward. But it really, really helped me own and stand up for me, right? It gave me a space
Mm.
for me, right? And being like I did this when I was when my children were quite young, and I was super, super busy, right? And it was like a vacation every time I went out there. But it gave me my space,
Mm.
and it gave me the ability to stand up for me and what I wanted, and have so much fun, right? So, and make that impact, right? Which was just wonderful.
I like because the way you share it is that well, yeah, especially I had a conversation just yesterday with a woman who's just a very young mother, a few months old baby, and she's still in the struggle of making time for the baby and how do I care about myself. And this is a story that you shared. Like
Yeah.
when you have young children, it's really hard to make sure that you have a space for yourself because it stays important.
Yeah.
It's caring for yourself is helpful also for caring for your children. And so if
Yeah.
you can have such an experience when you're a young mother or a young parent, it's really is an important thing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I really like that story. um I was a little bit intrigued when you said in the beginning, I don't, or somewhere just in the first part, you said, I don't have a big musical background, but it sounds to me like you have an experience background, maybe not a theoretical one, but you do have the experience of doing that. So
Yeah.
I find it interesting that you then say about, yes, I don't have the background, so I don't know.
It's pretty interesting. I mean, I used to sing a lot of choirs and stuff like that when I was younger.
Mhm.
But this is again, it's funny, like even when you look at from agile, like stepping into the unknown and not knowing, right? Like I've always wanted to kind of direct like courses, and just like I'm always, so I think I've always had it within me to kind of get up and direct. But I wasn't sure how to do it, right? So I was at first, though, I was part of it. So I had to be part
You
of
were
the
directed before, so you had the experience as a team member, if I would put it,
probably. Yeah,
and
yeah,
being directed by
yeah,
one or multiple people, and then at some point you said, "Okay, I'm switching sides in a
yeah,
sense."
yeah. But
It's,
and
it's
it's interesting when you're directing too. I mean, that you're a leader standing in front, right? And you are that face that they're you're standing and they're there, right? And they're projecting to the audience. So you have to have that face, right? And
you
you
don't
have to
see the audience because
I don't see
everybody
the
is behind.
audience. Yeah, they're all
Right,
behind me.
right.
And so you're up and you're like, you've got all your faces in front of you and holy crap, they reflect onto you what I think you reflect onto them, so you need to
Mhm.
have that energy, you need to have that, going and there's no time for self-talk. Right? There's no time. I got this. I don't got this. You just, and it's hard. Like it is really hard, right, to let go. And that's one of the things I've been trying to do for many years. I don't know if I'll completely be able to do that, but yeah, like there's so much. It's funny when I start thinking about so much of how I take that into the spaces that I'm in, right?
Mhm.
Because you need to have that, influence, right? And it's how you show up how influences others. So if I'm a frown, they're gonna frown too, right? So yeah, it was fun. It was fun. It was exciting. It was a very short little thing in my life, but still had a big impact.
It had a big impact. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I also like because I see similarities because and also what you do in your work because you said I was a developer and now you're more in a coaching role, which is
yeah,
a kind of similar thing. Like you stepped away from the coding part or the team part and you
yeah,
moved into organizing, facilitating teams, which
yeah,
is a director does similar kind of stuff. It's completely different because the tasks are different, but
yeah.
still there is similarities I see. Is that, do you feel that too, or is this
Yeah,
just
no, it's
me?
true. I need to have that hands-on, right? So
Hmm.
it's actually kind of interesting that you talked about that because that's what it's like, and I do this with my work. I need to help people get to from point A to point B, right? I see it. I can see there's this that you can we that there's this gap, right? And
Hmm.
my goal is to help them get to that particular space. And for me, a lot of times it's because I've experienced it before. I know how to get there. I've taken that steps before, or I know someone else has done it. So for me, it's been always just to kind of like bring people to that. So but for me, I have to be able to see myself doing it. So I have to have done it, right? Or seen
So
myself doing it.
coaching a team of, I don't know, cooks, for example,
Yeah.
creating, well, cook, you probably cooked in your life as well, but well, Lisa Atkins talked about coaching a group of marine biologists, for
Yeah.
example. That would
Yeah.
be for you a lot harder because you've never done that job. Is that what I'm
Well,
hearing?
no, actually, so this is the interesting thing. So that's kind of interesting you're saying that. And I'm pretty good at this. I'm getting better at this too. I don't need to understand the context of your job. All I need
Hmm.
to know is how a group works, right?
Okay.
So yeah, so for me, it's around the dynamics, the power dynamics of a team, right? And so I've sort of stepped out of the just working with just developers, and I can relate to developers, architects, like all of those people because I played the testers, I played all the roles, so it's easy for me to connect with them. But now, I work in the space of with a lot of businesses like fraud and banking and some
Mm.
other groups I work with. I know nothing about how they run their business, and I don't need to know. And now
And you
it's just
never frauded the bank and stuff like that, so there's no need to that
yeah,
knowledge.
and like for me, my confidence is I know how to
Mm.
create people. I know how to create connections. I know how to get people to how to help them, support them, so that they can make this big impact. I know how to call the elephant out when I see
Mm.
something's off, like in the chorus, right? Oh, that note is totally off, right? Like, no, do it again. So I can see the space, and then I can help them realize the places where they need to kind of connect with others, or the things that they need to do in order to become a great team, right? Or great individuals which are impacting that team, right? So yeah.
But I'm hearing that you're now able to do that because you had that experience twice,
Yeah.
in a sense, from being a choir member to becoming a director, then a developer, becoming a coach, a facilitator, and now you're, after
Yeah.
that many years, are like, but now I feel that my real playground is working with the teams and
Yeah.
seeing and dancing with them, basically around. That's a
Yeah.
little bit what I'm hearing. So
It's true.
that's
It's
that's
like they have a music to them, right? Like there's a flow to them, right?
exactly.
There's just like there's something off here, this ooh. Yeah, so yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's once, yeah, you need to find the right words, but that's
Yeah.
what I hear, that you recognize. I recognize a lot of that. I started out in similar kind of things, and
Yeah.
this is what I've noticed, that for many coaches, once, well, it helps, especially in the start, when you've been a developer, when you know, and it can sometimes still help to sit down and say, okay, let's show me what you're working on, how hard it is. But at
Yeah.
some point, it's really about the dance of the people and how they're interacting, and then you sometimes, even just observing from a distance without hearing them, you can sometimes already know what's going on. Well, you don't know the details, but you know something's off between these two people. You just
Yeah.
feel it.
And well, and there's another aspect I think too is and I work a lot with this as well, is you need to be able to understand yourself, right? So there is this
Mm.
aspect of when if you can unpack yourself and your humanness, right? And how you work. Like I work with things like saboteurs, right? So I work with like they call it, I don't know, some people call it shadow or whatever the case may be. Like you work with things that trigger you, right? So you get to understand, when I feel unsafe, I tend to do these things, right? I'll tend to do this, or I'll tend to maybe be more of a pleaser, right? Because if I'm a pleaser, that will create a bigger connection with someone else, and then therefore I'll feel safe because so there's ways that we react as an individual when we feel unsafe. And so it's understanding your own triggers. I think it's really super important, and then how you can show up to create that particular impact. So it's understanding who you are and your values. Like there's a whole bunch from a personal perspective that once you unpack your own self and how you show up, right? Like on stage.
Mhm. Yeah, I recognize this.
Yeah, like when you unpack that, now you can relate to, well, I can relate to me. I'm wondering if others have the same thing, right? Are they similar? Are they unsimilar? Are they, there's all this stuff that's there, right? So, and I'm still unpacking because I don't know the humankind. I know myself, but I know that there's a lot more to know about individuals, right? But I bring that
And
in with the
people
space.
will still find new ways to trigger you, and then you're like, damn it, okay, why did this happen? And then, but that's the good well, for me, I assume you have also people you talk to. I have my own personal coach where I afterwards
Yeah, I
and
do.
talk to and say, what
Yeah,
what what happened, why, okay, and then indeed, like you say, we unpack what's happening to us, and we try
yeah,
to figure out different ways to try to understand where this came from. Okay,
yeah,
so maybe this person was doing that or doing that, and sometimes it's very
yeah,
in your face. So if somebody starts shouting to me, I know how I will react, but sometimes it's very subtle, and then I react in a way that I really need to dive in very deep and very long before I figure out why did I react that way. It's
yeah,
thank you
yeah,
for sharing, because it's indeed a lot of the things that we do has to do with understanding ourselves. And yeah,
yeah,
we it takes a long time becoming a coach. It's not just about understanding the rest of the world. It's, well, also, but it starts with understanding ourselves and what triggers us, and that helps us
yeah.
helping other people. That's
Yeah, well, yeah, it's about creating that impact, right? And what it's also pushing away all those thoughts in our head so that we can be present in the moment, right? And understanding our triggers. I what I see in the trigger space is there's a lot of ways that different people react and how it triggers one another, and I think as teams understand how they trigger each other, they can start figuring out um, how best to be with each other, because they can trigger each other, right? And this whole
Oh,
thing keeps
they
going.
will always trigger each other,
Yeah,
and that's the thing. And it's always the other people, or the people who are not part of the team or whatever. But yeah,
yeah,
like you say, if we understand each other's triggers, we can react or ignore or whatever. We can deal with it. We
yeah,
can take a choice in a sense, on how to do it. And sometimes we do want to react, and sometimes we want to ignore because for whatever reason. It's really interesting. I thank you for bringing that up, because this is, for me, one of the reasons, one of the things that we don't always talk enough about as coaches, about all the work that we do to understand ourselves, to
yeah.
yeah, to help others in a sense. So thank
And
you for
and,
sharing.
and I went into coaching because I wanted to influence others. And what happened?
Oh, damn it! So you were in for a big surprise then.
Oh my gosh. It was like, holy crap, who am I? It was wonderful. The best thing I've ever done was to figure out who I am, right? Because that's the only way I get to figure out if I can make an impact, right? So, and I'm still trying to
Yeah.
figure out who is Joanne.
Yeah, but that's and it's really important, and this is why I brought it up. I have my own personal coach, like you said. You
Yeah,
you have your people where you're talking with, and that a lot of beginning coaches don't always understand that yes, we have our own, and it's after 10 or 20 years, it's not that path is over. Now we can say, okay, check and done, and then we
yeah,
there still is, and sometimes we need other people to bring us further.
yeah,
But we need people to help us with, to understand us,
yeah,
and that takes a long time. And
yeah,
and yes, I had a conversation with one of my children this weekend, and he said, yeah, but how do you know what to coach people? And when yeah, because he doesn't always see when I'm coached, because he's
right.
not always he's of course not present in these coaching conversations. And yeah, so when was the last time you were coached? I was like, yeah, just a few hours before, but that's not always visible. And it really made me realize that, okay, this is something not many people know.
Yeah.
And I tried to share it, but it's, yeah, we don't talk enough about it. So that's really good.
And
So
you know
go.
what's it's interesting, like in terms of just I mean, if people care about money, for example, if that's one of your triggers, I've almost doubled my salary through all
Mm,
of the programs I've done on coaching, which I think is for others, but it's actually helping me, right, become more impactful. And yeah, I have a team of like four coaches, right? And
yeah, it's good that you bring up the money, because indeed I spend about 10 to 20% of my revenue, not my profit, but of my revenue, on
yeah,
coaching and working, and so on
yeah,
training and stuff. And
yeah,
every time at the end of the year, I look at that amount of money, and it's like, damn, it was so much money that I spent this year on working on myself, basically. But
yeah,
like you say, if you
yeah,
look back at that, yes,
yeah,
it's, and every year it's more money, but it's also
yeah,
because I make more money, and it's
yeah,
and the opposite is true as well, is that sometimes to reach, especially when we're talking about larger corporations,
yeah,
the funny part is also that if you're too cheap, that you cannot reach the people that you need to reach to have a real impact on a large corporation. And sometimes I know people, friends of mine, that charge a lot more money, and because of that are able to reach out at a different level. I was like, ah, okay. And
yeah,
they're not better or worse than I am, and we
yeah,
we feel, but it's like, okay, if you want to reach out that level within that company, it's easier. And it's like, okay, that's also, it's helping both of us.
yeah,
Also,
yeah.
not just the money part, but the impact part, which is
Yeah.
as important for the work
I
that we're
mean, for
doing.
me, for sure, I'd want to be able to put the price out because I am that.
Hmm.
And to be able but for me, the coaching is I've been able to get more confidence. I've been able to, like, I'll say, I step into the big room. Like I own more of my
The
impact.
room. Hmm.
because of all of the work I've done, right? It's helped me, it's helped teams, it's helped others. I don't know if, and it's helped my children. I have to sit there and say, right, because I've totally changed and I'm easier to work with. But yeah,
And
so yeah,
do they realize that? Did they realize that you did that work, that impact?
yeah, they do know. They don't like being coached, by the way. So I don't know about your
Oh,
kids. Don't coach me. You
yeah,
know,
exactly. That's not our goal. It's no, I'm asking because the very first coaching kind of training that I did, I remember I was 23 or something like that, and I went to talk to my father, and I said, I don't know exactly what, but when I was 16, you did some training and I want
mm,
to know more about that. And basically, what I said, and it took me, I talked the full afternoon with him, and basically, what I realized there, what I was saying is that you did something there when I was 16, and that had such an impact on my life, on our
yeah,
life as a family. I want that too. I want to learn what you learned because and it was one of the most impactful trainings that I've done. Uh, Partially because of course it was the first coaching training that I did, so of course that has more impact than everything that follows because I learned about, like you said, learning about myself has impact on the rest of the world. But I still remember going to my father, not knowing why I wanted to do that. And in that conversation, I realized, okay, I'm interested because I saw something changing in our family life. I didn't realize that when I went there, but
yeah.
it was in the conversation I realized that, okay, that's why I was interested because it didn't just change your job, it changed our family culture, our family interactions, and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
well, it's interesting because you say that because so my girls actually were just talking about it this morning. They're going like, "Oh my gosh, mom! Like, do you know how far you've gone? Like, do you know
Hmm.
how much you've grown? Like, they're so proud of me." And I'm like, "I'm so proud of them, right?"
Hmm.
But how many kids have said, "I'm so proud of you, mom." I'm like, "What?" You know, I'm like, that's just an amazing kind of feeling that they've come to me, but they've recognized that I've changed quite a bit. I've stepped into owning who I am, right?
Hmm.
And it's like it has created a very large impact in our lives, and actually has actually improved their lives too, because we're a family that is very and my daughters was sharing that with me too. Very transparent, right? Like we're transparent about our feelings, right?
Hmm.
You know, we're like, no, you know, and that doesn't work for me. Like we know where each other is at. Like we may get huffy and puffy or whatever, the whole thing. That's okay. We walk away, but we come back and we talk about it, right? So and it's just created a beautiful dynamic, and we're always improving, of course. I mean, I always say my kids, everyone says, oh, your kids are great, and I go, yeah, but they're not perfect, they don't clean their rooms. You know,
There's
but
still a stuff to work on.
yeah, but yeah, throughout this whole thing with coaching, I realized I can make a bigger impact, and I became, like I was saying, I became more independent, and we went through, like, actually personally, I went through a divorce because of it, and so that relationship wasn't a great relationship on our kids, on our family, on us. And so it actually kind of freed the doors, so I could step into becoming even that much more impactful. And all this
Mm.
stems from coaching. Like it stemmed from, but it stemmed from me wanting to figure out how I can become more impactful, how I can become more better, how I can, like, and you know, and so I had to kind of peel away all these levels of me to kind of figure out what's underneath. And there's tons of stuff, and there's still more stuff, right? There's lots of closets that I don't want to go into. I'm sure I haven't figured out how to get the key to open it.
Stuff
But
that you want to keep hidden for a while, stuff that
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
that
Oh,
maybe later, and but yeah, I think
yeah,
we all have these kind of things, and the people that think they don't have it, they just haven't discovered them probably.
yeah, yeah,
I recognize a lot of what you're saying. I'm not there yet with my children, I think, although
yeah,
they will. Yeah, there is a lot of transparency. Well, when I had just this weekend, I had a big discussion with my partner, and they were all jumping in and all had opinions, which
yeah,
doesn't help the situation, of course. But at the same time, I was happy that we are transparent
yeah,
about when things are not going
Yeah.
well. Every relationship has at some point some dips, some highs and
Oh,
some
yeah, for
lows.
sure.
It's and I don't want to hide. I know friends that want to hide every fight they have with their children.
Yeah.
Like, no, I want our children to see. What we realized later on, and we're still figuring that out, is that um getting together or fixing the problem or fixing the discussions that I have with my partner, we usually do offline because we don't do that in front of the children. And then
Yeah.
we still realize that we have to kind of show them also that it's not just discussions, there is also the making up and the making it better.
Yeah.
And we're still struggling with that because when we try to do this in front of them, they jump in and that doesn't help. So we haven't figured
No.
that part out. So
Well, it's
it's
interesting,
tricky.
right? Because how do they learn how to take care of conflict, right? If they're not
Mhm.
hearing others do it. Like, it's just like it's so and I get that, right? Because I know, I know, my ex would walk away. He wouldn't, yeah, he's not great with conflict, but and neither was I at that particular point in time. Both of us were like that. So my kids didn't know how to really handle conflict. It's more or less walking away from it. And so,
Mhm.
we need to be able to harness that. Like, there's something like, what I love and what I started to start doing is there's a gem underneath conflict, right? There's always a gem in conflict. And
Yes.
so I look at it from that perspective, and I do workshops and stuff like that on that too, because there's so much energy in conflict. Like, I love energy. I'm an energy. I love energy. So I need
Yeah,
it.
but there's and in a lot of conflict, that's for me the way I look at it, and that's there's a difference between my partner and me. But for me, I like
Yeah.
conflict, not in I like the conflict itself, but I
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
energy because it and
Yeah.
for me it also shows that you still both care. If
Yeah.
at some point you don't have the energy anymore to go into the conflict, then there is
Yeah.
something worse wrong for me. If the moment I no longer fight for my relationship or my team or whatever,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
the moment that it's over, and so there is that
Wise.
the energy is that good part. But like you
Yeah.
say, we need to find a way to channel it in a way that it
Yeah.
can create
Yeah.
something nice instead of a big fight. Or yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
And the big fight
gotta
sometimes happens because venting needs to happen. That's okay. A plate needs to be thrown. Someone needs to be, like, it's just,
As
you
long
gotta
as
walk away.
nobody gets hurt physically and even
Yeah.
emotionally, that it you need to,
Yeah.
but like you say, you need to have a safe way of venting and a safe way to do
Yeah.
that. And that's it. This is the part where I'm saying that we still have to figure this out with the children because they might jump into that kind of thing. They're in they're teenagers, so right, of course they worry when they see their parents having a
Yeah.
discussion, and when
Yeah.
some of us vents, then they jump into that and defending and sometimes making it worse. And yeah, that doesn't help. It doesn't help to release the pressure and everything. So
You know
we're
what?
still into that.
You know what this reminds me of is, so I would do different things with my kid. I know you have a question regarding agility, personal agility, but this is coming up now. It's good.
Yeah.
So
So
the
let's stick with this question.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
So what I used to do with my kids was take Lego. And I,
Mhm.
like, when you used to do Lego and you used to kind of like, yeah, so I think used to take Lego, and I would give it to them to kind of like, okay, like, what is what, what's conflict like, or, how would you like conflict? And I would use those questions. And this was the best trick when they were younger, to kind of like an agility pattern
Mhm.
to use with them, because they love Lego. They love building
Mm.
things with Lego. So I would sit there, and you could just build the whole thing around conflict. You're creative enough. You could kind of like, okay, what's it like when, and then what's it like when we're all working together, or what's it like? And I'm telling you, my kids had so much fun doing that. That was great. And as they got older, I started to do design alliances. And
Mm.
so it's like, okay, so for us to be together in conflict, how do we want to be? For us to be together in this house, right? And if we want this great house, how do you want it to be? And we would whiteboard all the different things, and then we come up with, an agreement that we would want to have around a clean house, which didn't work. But that's because I
It's
have
an
a hard.
experiment, and yeah, the acceptance criteria were not that clear apparently, but
It
yeah.
really required the scrum master of the team to agree how they're going to keep it together, and I think I failed to do that part.
It sounds like a Scrum mom more than a Scrum master, but yeah,
Yeah,
something like that.
exactly. Oh my gosh. But yeah, those are the things I would do with them, which was fun. But that they
But
and
they
it's neat,
still say that they
like,
don't like to be coached by you because that sounds a lot like a coaching exercise. I've done similar kind of things with my children when they were younger, but if I
yeah,
would do these kind of things now, I would definitely hear that don't coach us and we're not one of your teams and whatever. So,
yeah,
so I'm not sure. But
yeah,
maybe with the Lego, well, yeah, I don't know if they would still be interested in working with Lego at this moment.
yeah,
Um, but it's an interesting way indeed because well, what you're saying is that it's using whatever is available, and Lego is then one of the things that is available to yeah kind of work around and make a metaphor of whatever you're trying to do.
yeah.
If it's a
It,
conflict or if it's yeah
yeah.
uniting.
Because it distracts them from looking at you, right? And like it distracts that attention and all that stuff, and it puts them to a creative space that we know that Lego kind of brings them in towards, right? And it's just so cool. Like they just love to build, and you can talk, and they're they can fiddle and stuff like that. So actually it was one of the best things I did with them. I can remember I got so much information from that, like. And of course it was Lego, so they wanted to play. So it was like, I go like, do you want to play this thing with Lego? Oh, okay, yeah, okay, great, right.
Yeah, that's it's. I remember a technique that I'm using a lot, the check-in from the core protocols Matt Glad said, and
Oh
at
yeah,
some point they learned something similar at school, but really at a young age. I think that was 4 or 5 or something like that, and they learned something similar at school. The only
yeah.
difference was at school they were only allowed to have one emotion, so they could only be mad or sad or glad or afraid. They could not use the mixture. For
Oh
whatever reason, their school didn't allow it, but I didn't care that much, but
yeah,
that gave us a lot of information because at some point, so my what was it? I don't even remember who it was. I think it's the oldest one, but I'm not 100% sure. And so we asked at some point when they went to bed, okay, what's the emotion that you have? And in
yeah.
one of these days, the kid was putting, I'm sad because it's a Tuesday, and Tuesday the babysitter is going to come. And I was like, but there's no babysitter coming. What's happening? But then I realized that on a normal Tuesday, indeed, my partner and I, we would go for a cooking class, and there would always be indeed a babysitter. And
Right.
even at the young age of 4, this kid realized that, hey, wait a minute, um, it's Tuesday, and so there should be a babysitter. And he was scared. I remember again who it was. He was scared that the babysitter wasn't there yet, and that he would need to go to bed, and he wouldn't be able to properly say goodbye to us before we would leave.
Oh wow.
But we didn't realize it was holiday, and in the holidays there was no course, so that didn't happen. But
Yeah,
because of this exercise, this very young child at an age of 4 was able to articulate a fear that he had that
yeah,
we didn't even think about it because that situation was not real for us. We knew we were not going out, we knew there was no babysitter, but we
yeah,
didn't realize that he was thinking it's Tuesday, so a babysitter is coming, and the babysitter is not there yet. And so there was a whole dynamic in his head that was
yeah.
completely false, but because of this tool he was able to explain it to us.
That's so
And it
powerful.
was
That's beautiful.
yeah, and I realized that if he had not learned this tool in school,
Yeah,
we would not have used it, and we would not have learned about that fear. So
yeah,
that sometimes it's really interesting. And I learned also at yes, even at a young age of 4, people are very able to express their fears if you give them some kind of tools that allow them to talk about these kind of things.
yeah. That's
It's
perfect. That's beautiful. Oh, that's so cool.
talking about personal agility tips and about what you can bring. So
Yeah,
we kind of threw around the whole order of the questions, but that's okay.
that's
Let's
okay.
still
What?
go to the second or the third, depending on how we look at it. Third question
Yeah.
then: if you had not been to IT, because you said you were a software developer in the beginning, and
Yes,
you had
I was.
already a
Yeah,
brief career in music, let's put it like that. But
yeah.
what else would that been a real possibility of becoming a
You
career, or
know what?
was there something
Well,
else?
I mean, okay, there's reality and what I would dream to be, right? So
Hmm.
it's actually, I mean, I would have loved to have been a Hollywood star in musicals.
Mm. Wow.
So I remember as a kid, all I would do is watch all the musicals. Like I loved all
Mhm.
musicals when I was a girl, little girl. So yeah, I would have loved to been on stage and singing and being a Hollywood star, right? Like that would have just like took me out of the world I was in, being a middle child, you know. But it would have allowed me to
Getting
have
more of that attention to you because, of course, as a middle child, you lose all that attention. Yeah, so I can
oh
get
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you briefly had it in a sense. So you was that when you had that, how would I call it, that experience, was there something that you then said, is that I don't want it, or I've seen enough? Was there a part that you said, okay, this is actually more fun, more work than the fun it looks on television, or whatever? Or is it more that you really felt like imposter syndrome or something, like I cannot do it, or
Oh,
what's
the
that?
imposter syndrome is always there. It's a really interesting. I love the question because I actually there was one thing where I was actually part of a quartet.
Hmm.
And so the barbershop is like, you have like there's 90 or so ladies, right? And they play the four different parts. And baritone, tenor, lead, and there was one other. I can't there's a melody, no baritone. Yeah, anyways. So and bass, yeah. So and I love the basses. They're amazing. Um, but when I was doing a quartet and there's just four of us, and I had to listen to my own voice, and I heard
Hmm.
my voice, and it was harmonizing with the other ones. It freaked me out.
In what
Like it was
in
like,
what sense? In
well,
positive
because
sense
I
or
was like,
negative?
almost,
Or
it scared me because all of a sudden I had this feeling I could do it,
mm. Oh,
and
damn it!
so
Damn it! Now it's real.
now it's real. It's real, right? And now it's just like, oh my gosh, I have a voice and it's there. It sounds tiny. It's in, yeah, and the imposter, I'm not good enough and all that kind of stuff, whatever the case may be. So it's interesting that this is a very much another pattern. And you're a pattern person, I can tell. You pick up patterns. But this is another little pattern of mine. It's just like I get out there, I try it, I do it, it works. Okay, now what's next, right? I don't stick with it, right?
Mm.
Like long enough, especially when it's like something
Been there,
that,
done that, something like that.
yeah, but something that's scary, that I can make an impact. When I can do
Mm.
something big and I can make that impact, it's scary, right? Because then I'm on stage and then I get judged and then I could be thrown off the island. It's just like, all the stuff that goes, I'm alone, naked and then whatever, right? It's just like you're totally vulnerable, right? And then it's just like then it's like dealing just with me. So it's really interesting. Yeah. So there was a point that came, and then there's also a point, the fact that I am a person that does, I'm high energy, so I do a lot of work. And so at that point in time, I had four children, a full, like a pretty much a full-time job, and then all the demands of home life, and then this relationship that wasn't, so there's so many things that were in place at that time that I basically had to back away from it, right? And so I didn't continue in that particular space, because it requires me to learn more technically to be like a director, or if I wanted to be a professional singer. Like I didn't feel I was good enough to kind of do that. I would need to do more work on my voice. But I'm thinking my thing is drum. I love a
Mm.
deep beat, and I'd rather do drumming, right? And so I'm going to try that.
Hey.
I'm going to do drumming circles and stuff like that. But I have like this, like I feel more into the beat than of my voice. So I think that's more stronger in me, is this beat energy. So I can't wait to try that out and see what that's like. I have a piano that's downstairs, but I tingled in that, but I just
So
it
it also sounds like you like to experiment with a lot of these things, and then and
yeah,
once, like you said, once you've done it, it's like, okay, been there, done that. Let's move on.
yeah,
Um, and
yeah,
but this brings, yeah, a lot of new experiences and that you can bring for different kind of opportunities later on in life. Huh? So it
Yeah.
sounds a lot like a book that I read, I think last year, about, well, kind of generalists. Like, okay, you want to go, but real generalist in the sense that go deep in something for a very short time and then move on and then go deep somewhere else. Like, okay, you're as a singer, director, then drum, then piano, like, yeah,
Yeah.
different kind of things. I recognize that, and there's a lot of, well, I'm a lot similar in different kind of things. I
Yeah.
recognize that it's and for me this is what brings, yeah, how would I say it? It brings a lot of depth, but in a different kind of way. People typically think as someone who's deep, that as a very specialist, but I believe that you can be, yeah, there's a lot of depth in doing generalist, but like deep, what can backs it like paint dripping. Yeah, so you go deep, there is some dripping for one part and then to another part and that, and yeah, there is still is a
Yeah.
lot of depth in what you're doing, because it's the stories that you can tell now is wonderful.
Yeah. And I get enough to know, and then I can connect. So I can connect the dots easier, right? So it's easier for me to kind of connect how all these things work, and connect with others, right? So, and actually maybe that's coming up for me, is that it's a way that I can connect with others. But then imposter syndrome always shows up, that, oh, you play piano. Yeah, I only got to grade
Mm,
3, but and I can't remember it. So I have to go back and remember it again, right? So but
yeah.
I can connect with others in that space. So, which is kind of neat too. Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. So there is a part that, okay, deep, it's good, but at the same time it's like, am I good enough? But then
Exactly.
yeah, then you figure out something like what you do now, where I feel that this is different in the sense that you're coaching. You maybe had a little bit of imposter syndrome there as well, but I don't feel it
Yeah.
now for whatever you're doing. It's like
Yeah.
now you're showing up fully with
I
everything that's happened in the
Yeah,
meanwhile.
I am, and I also want to show up more fuller, right? And so for me, I
Mm.
don't think and I think the imposter syndrome is there. I think it's like, I'm not good enough. Can I do this initiative that I want to do? Like, do I have this mentorship program that I did in Toronto, where I
Mhm.
saw this gap, right? And it was like so many years ago, that it was like 5 years ago or 6 years ago when I started doing this, and there's all these new mentors. Like, this is just when it was just starting to get, I guess we got out of the early adopters and we're getting into mainstream. And so
Mhm.
many people were popping up all over the place. And so what started to happen was, some of the elders, I'll call them the elders, had some challenges, right? Um, with,
No, I'm not sure I understand when you say right. So it sounds like I should understand, but I'm not sure I understand. So please say some
okay.
more.
Oh, okay, okay, no problem, no problem. I just thought I could hear something. I was going like, okay, yeah. So, and that threw me off. Sorry, I'm back.
It's
um,
fine. It's fine.
yeah, no. So with the mentorship program, for example, we
Mhm.
had all these new people, who are new Scrum Masters, new certifications, like people who just didn't know what to do. What is the next step I need to do? And then we have people who've been practicing for many years. By then, it would have been 10 years or something like that, or 8 years. And so the people that have been practicing for a while, looked at the people that were brand new, and just like, oh my gosh, look, they got the certifications. Now they're going to dilute agile, and it's
Mm.
not going to be as good, right? So there was an aspect of, there's people that are here that were just going, like, the people that I adore and I respect and I love doubted, these new people. And I'm going like, and this is one of the things that really drives me a lot of times too. But there's this frustration that was going on between these two different groups, and I'm going like, but there's an opportunity here, right? I don't know
Mhm.
what it is. I don't know what it can be, but it's about bringing these people, these new people, and bringing them with being mentored, by people who've been in the industry, and helping them, right, create a greater space. So I started to actually develop this mentorship program. And at first, and talk about imposter syndrome, right? I'm worried that the elders are going to vote me off the island, right? Because it's like,
Mm.
she's doing this bad thing, right? She's trying to help these people, and I'm going like, yeah, but they need it, And so,
Yeah.
you need to step into it, right? You needed to try it. And so I tried it and I used all the stuff that we learned from Agile to get it going. And I'm in my 11th season, like over 400 people that have been part of the mentorship program. And
Sounds like you're doing something correct and right. And
yeah,
yeah.
in the end, I mean, I love what it's created and what it's done, and it's so beautiful. I'm so very happy of it, and so, I mean, that was a great thing for me to kind of step up, step out, and make that impact that I want to make. And now I'm involved in something else where I'm trying to make this big impact too, right? So I feel like I'm in the middle of a storm right now. But yeah, and again, the imposter syndrome's popping up. You can't do that. No way. Don't
Mm.
go too deep. If you go deep, you're going to get lost, right? You're going to get voted off the island, right? So, and that's what comes up with me, and I'm sure it comes up with. I'm not the only one in the world. It's a normal human thing, but it takes, you need to be able to trust yourself, right? To be able to just try and go out there in the unknown, right? And see how it
And then
works.
what's the worst thing that can happen is that maybe they vote you off the island, and but that's at least you've been on the island for a while. If you don't try it, you're not even on the island. So yeah, that's
Yeah, exactly.
it's but it is scary. I recognize that. I've started a few coaching programs, and
Yeah,
the very first one I just started without realizing too much, and then after a while there's other people helping out that have way more experience than I have, and I recognize that feeling like I'm happy. At the same time, I want to protect the way we're doing it because I know it's helping and it's doing good stuff. But
yeah,
sometimes there are more experienced people that say, "Well, let's move in that direction." And I say, "Yeah, but you- this is that's it's different than what we're trying to do." So that is hard to yeah,
yeah,
figure out both at the same time. Let's protect this way, the way it's working,
yeah.
still learning and yeah, and
But
wanting to learn and adapt and stuff like that, but still trying to protect the
yeah.
thing that is making it work. Yeah, so that is sometimes hard.
Well, and the hard thing is, like, what I found really hard is I didn't have any of the senior people, right? So I didn't have anybody helping me. So it was like, so I was constantly questioning, am I doing the right thing? Right? Am I good enough to be able to mentor all these other people? Right? So I mean, I had people that had like 10 more years experience and I had like 3 years experience. And I was just willing to kind of help out in the community. And that came from Lisa Atkins, by the way. She helped me. And then it
Woohoo!
just, yeah, I know, like this whole thing, eh? It's just like, I
So
love that.
I'll point here. No, what is it here? Somewhere, whatever. I don't know where. Somewhere a video with the conversation with Lisa as well for the people who are
Yeah.
interested. But
Oh,
listen
yeah.
to it after this video because this looks like this is going to be awesome anyway. But yeah, there's a lot what she's been saying about doing that. That's indeed
Yeah.
um that's there is so much value in her book and whatever she was teaching other people.
Yeah. And
Um,
I follow her. So
yeah,
very powerful.
that's very powerful. That's the thing, and it really helps. And I realized that when I started with coaching back in the early 2000s, there was nobody else doing. I literally think that I was the first one in Belgium who called myself an agile coach, and maybe there was somebody else, but I didn't
Oh,
know.
wow.
And so there
Yeah,
were
yeah,
still agile people. There were still other people, but nobody. I think I was the first who tried to do it full time and
yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh,
so there
wow.
is really that imposter syndrome because there's people around me saying coaching, there's never going to be, you were never going to be able to make money with that, and that's actually
Yeah,
said by somebody who stepped out of his job because he didn't feel like he fit it anymore.
yeah,
But I'm still doing it, so yes, I was able to do that, but it was still scary, and there was still that
yeah,
imposter syndrome, thinking like, is it true? Can I do it? Is there a job? Is there anything? And who can help me?
yeah,
And I now 20 years later, I still feel the same thing. It's like sometimes when I join a company, people look at me and say, "Okay, if you're the senior coach," I'm like, "Yeah, but I want to be coached as well. I want to be helped as well because you know your company better than I am." And
yeah,
so I bring some skills, of course. After 20 years, I've learned a lot of things, but I
yeah,
still need to learn how you do it inside your company and whatever you're doing here. And that yeah, that there is still sometimes that I feel like I don't know why I would call myself a senior coach. Yes, I know technically for all the how do they call it? Um, um, I know it in my brain, but my head, my heart doesn't always believe it. In the sense that, yeah, there
Yeah.
is it really true? And maybe you can do this as well. So there's that dynamic stays around. I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Well, it's actually interesting. So I know that you asked me for a book, right? Like
mhm.
what? So the book that I have, which is it's called the alter ego. That's the last one. Yeah, you
That
got it.
one.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Okay. So it's funny you're talking about imposter syndrome because it fits right into this thing, right? Where is it, he actually talks about, it's almost like you have to play like you're on stage, like me being, this director, right? And so it's like you develop these alter egos that help you perform at your best, right?
Hmm.
So for me, I have an alter ego, which is the Grand Duchess. I want to hold space, right? And I want to be able to come into this space and hold. And so she has, there's I am in that particular alter ego, like it's me that's in there, but I want to bring her out more, and I want to make her bigger, and I want to make her, and I want her to stand, like I just want to step into her because she does such great things, right? And so before I came in here, I go, okay, I'm going to stand into the Grand Duchess, right? Because she's
Hmm.
graceful and she's grand and she's like, and but it gives me a way to kind of like, it's playful, but it actually, it purposely sets my intention to have certain characters, right? And so he's worked with people like athletes and who have, say for example, a hard time with their game. He worked
Hmm.
with a tennis star who actually, whenever she started beating, she was like her top, right? Top of the her, she's like one of the best tennis players. I don't know her name, but she would kept when she really like when she's really beating another component, like really high scores, she would then tend to like stand back a little bit and then let the other person to win, right? Because she didn't like this whole thing about being unfair, right, to others. And
Okay, but the game is about winning, so it's interesting.
I know, I know, I know, but it was something from her, like it's one of her personal traits. Like she doesn't want to really, slam someone really hard, right? So
Crush someone. Yeah, right.
yeah, yeah, that's it. Crush someone. So she actually, what she did is she didn't know how, because what it was costing her game. Like she is so talented, but
Yeah,
it was
because
costing
then
her game. Yeah.
ah,
So
really
what she would have
interesting.
to do, she developed an alter ego, which I don't know what the name of her alter ego was, but she had an alter ego that as soon as she stepped onto the tennis floor, or
Whatever.
um
Yeah.
yeah, she then stepped into this alter ego, which was all around winning, right? And still I have a respect for people and everything like that, but my job here is to win. So this other, person, okay, you step back, right? So it allows you to kind of step in. So I also have like a shadow, it's kind of like a shadow ego, which I call him Alec. He's he, he's the one that, sometimes he'll come over me, and he casts doubt, and he does things like we were talking about a second ago, but it was a lot of saboteur stuff, right?
Mhm.
So basically I tell him to stay in my bedroom.
Mm.
He has a spot there, and I go, your job is to stay here, and this is, and so these things that I step into, right, at the Grand Duchess, I have some other kind of ones, help me set intentions so that I can be in this space to be the most impactful person I can be. It's not like it's not like it's not a person that isn't me, it is me, but it really is bringing out those great characters of myself, right? So to me, I found it a really great book, especially because he has all these different stories about how it's been used and how it can be applied. But for me it was just wonderful to be able to kind of like harness, like who is it that I want, how do I want to harness who I am so I can create this big impact, right?
It's
So it's a cool book. I would really suggest reading
every
it.
time I hear people talking about a book, I'm like, damn it, this is a book I want to read." But this is probably the most impactful one because I recognize a lot of that. When I was young, I always heard my mother talk about my father that he hated to do job interviews. He didn't like to do that, so he
Yeah,
only did a few jobs, and he stayed there a
yeah,
very long time.
yeah,
And he really hated doing job interviews. And somehow when I started working, I said to myself, I want to become good at doing job interviews. So I remember the first when I started working, I did a lot of interviews also to practice.
yeah,
And it's I didn't see it as an alter ego, but there's definitely a part. Well, the thing is, as a coach, when you work as a coach, I don't want to, as a coach, when I work with a team, I don't want to say, I'm this big person and I know everything. That's not my
yeah,
role as a coach. I
yeah,
want
yeah,
to listen to people. But in a job interview, I have to be there and I have to stand there and say, "Hey, I'm the person that you need. I'm the
yeah,
person. Look at me, and I'm the person you need to hire because I'm good at it."
yeah,
And
yeah,
for a long time I struggled with that, because how do you do that at the same time, be very powerful in the interview and saying, "Look
yeah,
at me, you need to hire me because I'm the best for the job," and at the
yeah.
same time stay humble when I start. And I always felt then, and it's a kind of an alter ego, because it's
It
really
is.
it's so I definitely need to look at that book to understand that what I'm
Yeah.
doing there, because I do part of that. I don't do it consciously. So it's
No,
good
we've
to
we've
understand that.
always, and this is something we've been doing ever since we were a kid, right? But what
Probably,
we
yes.
yeah, it's just, we don't realize it, we don't call it, but it's like, but now why not? Like, why not like
Mhm.
be set an intention as to, like, I would bring my superwoman, right, to come in there, Diana, like she would come in there all, Amazon woman like, and so, humble, beautifully humble. I love her, just her down, like her humbleness, and yet very powerful, right? Knowing what she wants, right? She's got a passion to her, right? So, and a purpose. And I love that too. So, like, you don't have to pick all of Diana and all that she does and whatever and the truth sayer and all that stuff, but, and physically fit and amazing and strong. But you can pick portions of these alter egos or the people that you can make up your own. Like mine, I made up the Grand Duchess.
Yeah, I
But
like that. It's
me.
it kind of it also reminds me of, I don't know the details anymore because I was very very young, but my I'll cut half of the story because it's too long, and this is an interview about you, not about me. But I have what's it called, a grand my not grandfather, but yeah, the whatever, not stepfather, grandfather, okay, somebody
Godfather?
that you say again.
Godfather?
Yeah, the godfather. That's the word I
Okay.
was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I have a godfather that was actually a priest,
Yeah.
and he once told a
Ooh.
story. So it's
Yeah.
very, but the reason why I mentioned the priest, we will recognize immediately, is very
Okay.
strange, because he has a story about women that had to have all these kind of roles. So a woman is part, she's a mother, so she's a partner, she has to
Yeah.
be a cook, so she has to be a cook in the kitchen, she has to be the perfect cook, and she has to be the perfect mother, whatever. And in the bed she has to be, and I don't know what word he said, it's something like whore, but he said something similar. And I remember being 6 years old, it's like, what are you saying? But at the same time, now I understand, like, yes, there is a part of it once you're
Yeah.
in the bed, or whatever place you are with your
Yeah.
partner. You don't
Yeah.
want to be the mother, you don't want to be the cook, or whatever. You want to look
You're
at,
the partner. Yeah.
you're the partner, and you look
Yeah.
at the sexual relationship you have. You want to have the pleasure and give the pleasure and everything there, so there's a role there to play.
Yeah.
And I remember, really, it's interesting because I don't think I remember thinking about that for 20 years, but just now you talk about it, it brings that up, that we had that conversation, that I heard about, yes, people having multiple roles.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's And I remember the reason why I say that he was a priest. I remember being shocked about the priest talking about sex. Of course, that was like, what's happening?
And you're only 5.
Yes. So
That's
yeah. So
crazy. Even at 5 to have a conversation about it, even if
well,
it
but
was from
this was me listening into a conversation he was having with my parents and
oh,
probably a lot
oh,
of
I
other.
see.
So
I see.
not just to me, but
Oh,
having.
oh,
But I
oh,
was just
thank you.
I was
Context.
eavesdropping in a conversation
Yeah,
of adults and not understanding it, and of course because I was eavesdropping, not being able to ask questions there.
yeah.
But it's something that stuck with me about the roles. It's interesting.
Well, it's funny. So now that it's been brought up a couple times in my head, I have to kind of share the story about roles. Roles is really important, right? You do play all these different roles, and
Mhm,
when we talk about the impact of coaching on my kids, for example, one of the things recognizing that you play all these different roles, even with but in a relationship when you have with another person, you're still you're also a person, right?
mhm,
And so, like, I had a mother hat when she was like, so the short story goes that she wasn't going to be coming home for Christmas that year. She lives across Canada and BC. So it was very much this whole conversation about, I wanted her to come home as a mother, right?
mhm,
But and I kept on playing in this role of a mother. And then all of a sudden I dropped the role of mother, right? And I became the role of like a compassionate friend, right? And
mm,
then when I went into that role, I saw a different perspective. And then all of a sudden the conversation totally shifted because I wasn't coming in with this role and the mother role, and I let it be whatever it was, and she actually eventually did come home, but it was a very difficult conversation for me, and I had to drop the role of being mother. And how often do we have to drop the role of being a coach, right? Or
mhm,
and sit there and go, okay, I'm taking this hat off. Okay, I've experienced this before. Okay, it's not going in the right way.
mhm.
You don't want to do this. Okay, I'm putting my coaches back on. So what do you think you're going to get out of this? So and it's just, sometimes we have to recognize those inclinations of ourselves to kind of like, there is this portion that wants to make the best of the situation, and it could be our role that we're playing that's causing an issue with it too, right? And how can we step into something different, which is going to give us more information to that situation, whatever that is. So definitely, like, it's great to kind of like, I love, like, we can talk about how the different roles that we play, but those roles affect the relationships that we're in, and we should always be looking at that, right, in relationship to
Yeah,
others.
and how the role that we're playing is being part of that, and if we
Yeah,
can step into a different role,
yeah,
that's it brings me to a conversation I sometimes have with single parents. So I have a few friends who are single parents, and the biggest thing that they always say is that, yeah, as a single parent, you have to be both. You have to be the mother
yeah,
role and the father role, being the archetypal mother role, the mother role that wants to protect her children, and the father role, the archetypal father role that wants to push the children out to be
yeah,
standing on their own. You need, and I don't care if it's a woman or a man who plays these roles, but you need both
right,
kind of roles to help a child grow up as a healthy
yeah,
adult. Both the
yeah,
protective part and the other part of being standing on your own feet. But if you are single as a single parent, you have to play both roles at the same time. And
yeah,
it's really hard. And for me, that's one of the advantages of having a partner, that we can step into these roles, and we sometimes swap the role
yeah,
that we're playing, and we
yeah,
can play around with it. And sometimes that's on purpose. Sometimes that kind of automatically happens because for whatever situation, I feel much more inclined to be the protective part, and
oh yeah,
my partner then will be more like, hey, wait a minute, there's the other part. But if you're a single parent, that's what my friends tell me. It's yeah, you have to do all of these things,
yeah,
and that's really hard. And that's one of the advantages I think about, yeah, being in a partnership that is still standing, is that we can well challenge each other when, like you
yeah,
say, sometimes you're too much in the mother role, and if you have a partner that's there that can say, wait a minute, there is also the other, I can
yeah,
jump into that other part. But if you don't have it,
Yeah.
it's a lot harder, huh, to do these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, it's true.
And
And don't forget yourself as its own role.
exactly. That's what I wanted to do. That who takes
Yeah.
care of you as
Yep.
that's another thing that I did I did want to bring it up, but yeah, that's the other part I hear from these single parents is that who
Yeah.
takes care of me, and there is
Yeah.
the risk that you then, as a single parent, ask your children to take care of you, and
Yep.
especially if they're a very young age, that's very unhealthy. Once they're
Yeah.
adults, we can discuss about that, but if
Yep.
they're four, they shouldn't take care of a father or a mother.
Yeah.
That's the whole other kind of roles that we're playing. A
Yeah.
really
Well,
interesting conversation. That's
yeah,
yeah.
that's when I stand into my Grand Duchess. She's got it covered. So I was like, okay, who's taking me? Grand Duchess. She's got me covered.
That's the thing. You need to
Yeah,
figure out what
yeah,
works for you, and it could
yeah,
be an alter ego like you've done.
yeah.
It could be another person, but you need to do that. That's
True.
the one thing that I keep telling people is that I'm reminded of that, and that's been a long time now. But I'm reminded that every time I take a plane, because in the plane they always keep telling you first need to take care of your own
Yeah,
oxygen mask before you can take care of somebody else.
yeah,
And I got into the habit, I didn't think more than 15 years ago, that every time on a plane, when I hear that message, to think, did I really take care of myself? And
oh
did
wow,
I watch out? And it's something that helped me a lot. Just hearing that message, think,
yeah,
wait,
it's true.
do I actually do this a lot?
Yeah,
It's a good reminder.
yeah,
Because it's well, in a lot of cases we don't do that.
yeah. I like that. I'm gonna do that the next time I'm on a plane. I can't wait because the
Well,
next time I'm on a plane, hopefully it will be to BC, if not Nashville. So it'll be good.
Well, the thing is, I used to be annoyed by that message because, like, yeah, you're
Yeah,
there on the plane, and for the X number, the 100th time, you hear that message, and then
yeah,
all of a sudden it struck to me like, wait a minute, there is a real important message behind. Instead of being
yeah,
bored and trying to ignore that message, I could use that time to actually
yeah,
do something useful and think about myself and did I take care of me? So that's
yeah,
why I'm sharing it, because every time I share this, there's people that tell me like, yeah, now I can actually think about that, because usually the people that have most about that message are the people who don't take care of themselves not good enough. Because a lot of us coaches,
guilty.
we well, a lot of us coaches, we do that because we want to help the world and we want to help the people around us,
Yeah,
and we see all these people in trouble and we want to help out, and we forget that who's out. And this is where you have your alter ego, the Duchess, that's great that
yeah,
she can help you. So that's
yeah. But it's a good reminder though, right? Like it shouldn't just don't need to wait for a plane. Like can we remind ourselves of that somehow every day, right? And I think it's a good
yeah,
practice to do. I think it's
it's
good.
good practice. I needed to have that on the plane now again after that. Um, it's been more than 3 years since I took a plane for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
But I don't feel I need it. It's I remind myself already about it. But I definitely, when I started with that, I needed that message, and maybe lucky for me, I was taking too many planes at that time, so that was helpful in that way.
And we, and we need the money for our coaching budget and personal growth budget.
That's the other part, yes. Okay, I want to go to, and I don't remember because we've now already talked to a lot of different questions, but probably the
Yeah.
fifth one. What's your biggest challenge, and why is that a good thing for you?
Oh my gosh. I think the biggest challenge I have is that I'm a really super creative thinker. So,
Hmm.
and my greatest challenge is that so many ideas come to me like incredibly like all over the place, right? And so it's like it's like I'm it's like this idea, look at me, and I'm like, oh great, I got an idea. Oh, there's another idea. Like it's like I get so distracted because there's just and I hear something on the news, or I hear this, or I hear something with a friend. Oh, I got that. Oh, I can do that, or what. So there's so many doors that are standing in front of me. It's just incredible, right?
Hmm.
Of opportunities. So so it's too many choices. And so I kind of I want to go with the flow, right? And I want to be able to take a pathway and just go with whatever seems to be the thing that's coming up next, right? I want to do that, but the thing is, a flow of a river goes down a riverbank, right? So there's constraints to it.
Mhm.
There's like it is creating that flow, right, to happen. And so for me, it's about keeping the focus as to what is that big thing that I'm trying to do. So it's a challenge. It's a big challenge because it distracts me from so many things and it takes me away from being focused. But on the other side, it's this great ability to become so creative, right? Like it's like when I'm having conversations with people, it like I'm going like, hold on a second, I have to like I'm also a person that has to talk my ideas out. It's like,
Mhm.
I go,
I
hold on a
haven't
second.
noticed that.
Yeah, but I go, I talk about, but I go, hold on a second, an idea's coming. It's just like there's something here. I'm not sure what it is, but in the next 2 or 3 minutes, something will arrive. But like, and I just like I like pulling things together like ad hoc and like and
Mhm.
so I love it because it's so creative and it's wonderful, but it can be really dangerous because. Okay, what are you focusing on this week, Joanne? Oh yeah, I got it. Oh, I got this thing I need to do. Okay, now put the toy down. Put that over here. Okay, next. Yeah, because it's a challenge and it's a blessing. So both sides.
It's interesting because I've been listening to, unfortunately, a Dutch book, so I can't share it, but it's a book on focus, and there's a lot of things in it that I recognize and I actually written myself about. But there's one part that they say, okay, we have so much to focus in our industry or in multiple industries about productivity, but there
Mhm.
is the creativity, which is another part, and yeah, we need both. And
Yeah,
somehow we have a lot of focus on productivity, but productivity, well, if you're a creative person, if you're an artist, for example, the productivity is in the creativity, is in the creative new ideas and the whole. And that's the interesting part of where that actually, I think it's the last part I listened to today,
yeah,
where it says that, like, there is a creativity, for the knowledge industry, which we are. If you look at software, and even in banking, because you just said earlier on that you're working for financial institutions. I'm helping a bank right now as well. They need a lot of creativity for new things that they're going to try out. There's a lot going on in the financial industry, so they need, actually, for me, their leaders, the CIOs and whoever, they need to
yeah,
be on their creative side. And it's not so much about productivity and that. No, you want their managers, top management, to think in a creative way about different kind of
yeah,
things. And but yet, at the same time, there is so much focus, and the people who rise to the top are, in a lot of cases, the very people who are focused on productivity. But wait a
yeah,
minute, we want that creativity, and creativity is not something that you say, okay, focus, now you have 5 minutes to come up with your best idea. We want to have free flow into that. That's yeah, the artists the music artists that I like most, they only bring out new records every 3 to 5 years, and then something's great coming. And it's not that they just come up with a new album in the last 1 month. No, it probably took them 5 years and touring and everything, but in between these
yeah,
5 years, they came up with 10 new songs. So it's probably about 2 songs every year or something like that. That's not a lot.
yeah. Well, it's
And
really interesting because there's the time actually. The time constraints can create creative things. There's things around constraints that creates that enables creativity, right?
yes.
It can damper it, but it can also enable it. So, we know that we try like the 2 week sprints, the 1 week sprint, whatever. Like it requires us to be a little bit more creative to come up with that solution, right? With the time constraints, or even as an artist, the constraint that they have is the canvas, or the size of the
Mhm.
canvas, right? So they're constrained by the canvas, so they can choose to do it, and and maybe they're constrained by the material that they use, or the paints, or oil, or whatever it is, right? um yeah, like it's just, yeah, so yeah, it's the focus. I love what you're starting to talk about in terms of focus too, because it's the focus. And how do I keep focus even now I'm not focused? I feel like I go, where am I going now?
Yeah,
But
but
yeah, Yeah.
It's that thing, and that this is where definitely need to read and listen that chapter, because he's talking actually indeed about you need a little bit of focus. So you extra time can help, but too much time doesn't help either. So there is
Yeah.
the different parts, these constraints, and with music as well. Again, most music songs are about 3 to 5 minutes, somewhere in between. And yes, you
Yeah.
can create a song of 1 minute, you can create a song of 10 minutes from time
Yeah.
to time, but most of it are somewhere in that time constraint, and you need to figure out how can I tell a song. And I remember an interview I saw. I don't even remember which one, but I know it's a Belgian artist who sings in Dutch, who said one time that um, he wrote some books, so a real story in a book, and then he realized later that he was actually better able at telling a story in a 3 minute song than in a 300-page book.
Oh wow.
Somehow, for him, he realized that, wait a minute, I try to tell the same kind of stories, but
Yeah.
somehow I touch more people if I try to do it in a 3 minute song with a
Yeah.
lot less words than in a 300-page book, because I add too much in it and whatever.
Yeah.
And he stopped writing books because he said, this is it's the same thing. It's telling a story, and it has a
Exactly. It's
beginning, it
saving
has a
it.
bridge, it has an end. But
Yeah.
yeah, and that's the focus again, and the constraints that you put yourself, that helps.
Yeah.
And it's like you say, you did a lot of different things, but a lot of it comes back to, okay, how do I help people bring, how do I
Yeah.
what do you say, how do I make an impact? And
Yeah.
impact could be on singing, having people having a good evening, but it could
Yeah.
also be on helping a team, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, and keeping I mean, that's one of the things I need to learn for myself is the focus, right? Keeping that focus all the time. And the way that I do that is understanding myself and, and my triggers. Going back to that
Well,
from the
and that
other thing. Yeah.
brings me actually to another question, that what drives you, because
Yeah.
I this is interesting. I keep asking this to people that I hardly don't know, but
Yeah.
I have the feeling, just like with many interviews, you're a very driven person. So there
I'm
is a
trying.
lot of drive, there is a lot of passion here, so that's something you
Yeah.
cannot hide. So
No,
what is it?
tons of passion. There's a few things that drive me, but the one thing that I would sit there and drives me crazy is going in like it's going in in this cycle, like just doing the same thing over and over again. And
Hmm.
like I don't like it when when there's a complaint about something that it's not working, it's not working, it's not working, but there's no one trying something different, right? It's
Hmm.
just like there's a problem, and it's just like, yep, it's there's a problem, and there's a problem, and it's just like we keep repeating the problem, and I just like, ugh, that drives me insane. Like it's just like a waste of everything, right? So I get very creative, right? I'm going like, okay, well, how do we break that cycle? I don't want that cycle anymore. I don't want to go back to this anymore. Let's move forward. I do what drives me is being stuck. I can't be stuck, right? And I guess that's my whole creative juice thing that comes like just I cannot be stuck. I need the freedom. I need to be moving. And so and I don't want people to feel like they're stuck. Like
Hmm.
it feels so wasteful. It feels like it
I
just
like that
feels
word. It's yeah,
yeah.
it's yeah. I find it really interesting that you say it. What drives me is being stuck, because stuck and being driven is like almost the opposite. But I do
Yeah.
understand that energy when people feel like they're bumping into a wall, and it's like, no, let's. I don't know. Probably in like a video game where people keep bumping. Well, you turn the wheel a little bit and you see if you can drive around it, or you can do something. Let's not keep bumping into the same wall. Um, I
Well,
find it interesting. It
I think
reminds.
it
Yeah, go
came from
ahead.
my brother. Sorry, I think it comes from my brothers when I was younger. So they used to pin me until I said uncle.
Oh,
I know there's a game. I don't know if you well, you might be familiar
no.
with it or not, but like they'd love to gang up on me because I'm so
Mhm.
dramatic. I would be like ah la, 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 whatever, screaming whatever, and so they loved taking the redheaded child and just like and then pinning me on the ground and wouldn't let me move until I said uncle, right?
Wow. Okay.
And so that really forced me to kind of like I hated it when just being like that, right?
Being stuck.
I do know that sometimes you have to let go of that, right? Because that's something internally that you are also like, and I have someone I'm working with recently that just wants to be stuck, and they just want to stay in that stuckness, and I'm going, okay, well, maybe you're not ready to get unstuck. And so, even though I'm so passionate about working with others to get unstuck and move forward, you also have to know when to let go, because it's no longer like that's my passion. But then, if that's not something that you want to do or the team wants to do, I can't force that to happen. Right.
And
Um,
maybe then you're not the right person to coach them if
yes,
that's
absolutely.
yeah, because
Absolutely.
yeah, you would run into your problems if you get frustrated because she stays stuck, and this
Yeah.
person gets frustrated because you want to make her, or her, it was a
Yep.
her, right?
Yeah.
Wants
Yeah.
to be unstuck. You want to unstuck her and she doesn't want that. Yeah, that
Yeah.
frustrates both of you probably.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and
So,
yeah, that wouldn't help that person probably until,
yeah.
like you say, she's ready to get unstuck.
Well, yeah, because it's just a time that kind of like, and then eventually, hopefully, they want to reach out, and that particular point in time they want to do it. But yeah, being stuck, I don't like being stuck. There's another one. It kind of like flittered in my brain and kind of went out. But that I would sit there. Oh yeah, the other thing is having no hope drives me. We need hope, right? So if there's something that we're
But if
doing that,
you don't have any hope that drives you, how did
yeah.
I'm not sure I get it.
Yeah, so I think with the pandemic, it really made me aware of how much the world, like at that point in time, people were losing hope, right? And
Hmm.
it was becoming really quite depressing. So I was becoming really depressed because I thought like everyone was just the world was just going, it felt like, and I was making up the stories in my head obviously, but it felt like the world was just going down the tubes type of thing. All these stuff. There's
But
so
that
many
didn't
unknowns.
drive you, that made you
So yeah,
the
but
opposite,
it
or
well, it's interesting because what it did is it actually once I with my coaches,
Mhm.
once I started to really
Unpack
unpack it
this.
all, right? It became, oh my gosh, I am the one that has the hope. I am the one that has the hope, right? And I am the one that's going to do something because I have the hope. If it's not me, who else?
So is it that not more that the hope drives you then,
Yeah, the
or
hope drives me.
yeah,
The
okay,
hope the
okay.
hope drives me, right? Like I can't live in a world where there's no hope. Maybe that's the whole thing. I can't be in a world. That's what drives me more than anything is I can't be with, where we can't hope, where we can't see a possibility, we can't
Right.
again, it comes back to being stuck, right? But I can't live in this world if people are disrespectful to each other or they're hurting each other or it's like where there's no hope for something good, right?
Yeah,
So
I get that. It might at some points feel naive because like we're hoping that there is a better world out there, but
yeah,
if there is no hope like that, what's the point in a
exactly.
sense? Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand that. Yeah, I have that, and I don't know, but I have the feeling that there's actually a lot of agilists who for me survived the pandemic much better than a lot of other people, because we were able to see hope. We were able to also understand that, hey, this is a VUCA world and not everything is clear. We
Yeah.
realized long before a lot of other people, like, the world is not just, yeah, you do X and you get Y. No, there's a lot of uncertainty with the feedback loop. Actually, with COVID was very long, and we know that this is insane and this is bad, so we need to look for faster feedback loops. But we also understand if the feedback loop is really bad, you have to assume that everything will go much worse before things go better, so you
Yeah.
have to adjust to the worst situation, wear mask, and get whatever do need to do that needs to happen. A lot of us, we could understand that, but we also had that naivete that we think like, but things will become better in a
Yeah.
longer time, but not tomorrow, not next week. It will
Yeah.
probably take another year or whatever. I actually, when the pandemic hit, I almost immediately thought to myself in March 2020, I thought this will take at least till March 2022 before we have
Wow.
even a vaccine. And then it
Yeah.
will take another year until the beginning of 2023 before I am vaccinated or my family is vaccinated. Because that's all the data that I looked around me. If I looked at
Yeah.
all old pandemics, the other pandemics took 2-3 years. Creating a
Yeah.
vaccine until then took 2-3 years. So I immediately in my head said, if I'm out of this situation before the beginning of 2023, that's a very good situation. I kind of
Yeah.
immediately locked into that situation. So
Wow.
even if we're not there yet, for me, it's
Yeah.
like we're ahead of the curve because I'm already triple vaccinated. My
Yeah.
whole family is vaccinated,
Yeah.
and everybody around it. So far, I'm lucky that nobody in my family died.
Yeah.
So I'm for me it looks, and there still is a lot of the numbers are not good.
Yeah.
This week, the decision was taken in the United States that on planes there no longer people need to create math
Wear masks.
wear masks, and there was
Oh wow.
something similar decided 2-3 weeks ago. There was something similar decided in Britain, and
Yeah.
actually now they see the results of it. That there is actually a lot of pilots and other people, personnel of airplanes that are falling sick. It's 2-3 weeks
Yeah.
later, so the feedback
Yeah.
loop is catching up with them. And I'm like, I'm not surprised. I understand some of that dynamic. And I have the feeling that a lot of agilists have similar kind of thing. Maybe they don't have the same story as I just shared.
Yeah.
But we have a lot more hope and we look much further in the future, and but we can at the same time take actions now to because we understand the feedback loops and everything.
Yeah. Well, actually, well, so this ties beautifully into the question that I want you to ask me about. So it's
Okay.
like, yeah, because it's
We're
like
really
it's
following all different kind of guys, but that's okay.
oh, I think that's just wonderful. It's just like, yeah, what could yeah. So it's what am I doing around hope, right?
Hmm.
And agility and that. And it just kind of like fits all perfectly into all this stuff. So the stuff that I'm working on right now is it's I love creating names. Again, I told you I was really creative. So it's like this name came up to me, which is called Wicked Agility. And so
Hmm.
um what I'm trying to do right now is like it's hard. It's almost like I want to harness all these great things that we're doing. Agilists, the power of
Hmm.
teams, wicked problems, right? And when we start talking about wicked problems, and I know in Germany, wicked can be bad, like evil. It can mean so many different things, but wicked can be good and wicked can be bad. Like it wicked, like so wicked, but a wicked problem is COVID,
Hmm.
right? A wicked problem is poverty. A wicked problem is things which have multiple symptoms and multiple solutions can take lifetimes to actually solve, right? But it requires a diversified team. Okay, it requires
Mm.
a team of different people to do it. It's not solved by one person, right? It's solved by teams of teams. It's solved by, so a lot of what we do is in this space of wicked problems. And in wicked problems, you chip away at it, right? You sense and adapt. You do a lot of stuff that is in the Cynefin framework, right? Um, and that Snowden, and of course, we want to make sure we recognize him and all the great work he's doing. And so that what we're trying to do is or what I'm trying to do is trying to close this gap again. I'll close the gap here. My hands there. Close this gap
Mhm.
where I see there's these great agilists who want to make a difference and they're community based and they want to create hope and they can go past this, right? And they can do this because they can see it. They're able to do some of this work. I see that they have the capabilities and abilities to work with wicked problems for sure. They know how to they know they have a lot of tools of how to do this. But the thing is, when we start looking at this, it's like, yeah, sure, Joanne, yeah, sure, I'm not a doctor, I can't help with COVID, right? Like, I mean, I'm not a specialist. Like, it's like I'm not, but when I was getting back to like that, what we do is we know how to harness the power of great teams, right, and great leaders. We know how to have teams, how an influential leader with a great vision, and a leader that understands themselves, and a leader that knows how to kind of like bring a team together, right? We know that when we have that great combination of that great vision and that urgency, right, that these guys can make a difference, right? And it's just, there's so many things which are in there, and I can't go into. I'm so excited about it all. But my whole thing is I want to hope globally, but act locally. Meaning
Hmm.
that, why don't we do this in our backyard? Like, why don't we do it with our local communities and our local governments, or our local, wherever the wicked problems are, or I'll call them gnarly, right? Because the gnarly problem that we may have in our current community could be flooding, or could the gnarly problem could be around, we're unable to retain staff, or the gnarly problem could be budgeting. We don't have enough budget to take care of infrastructure. We can't take care of this, or we can't take care of that, right? And like Luke Hoffman, he has the participatory budgeting stuff that he's doing.
Yes.
And it's like, you can bring that into your local community. It's like, guys, we pick up tools and techniques so quickly. We can pick that up and bring it in.
We've done it actually. Luke has done that in San Jose, and we done it in a company, well, not a company, in a community in Belgium, so a city,
Yeah.
where they actually used budget games to take decisions for that city, and we brought in a lot of well, I didn't bring it in. A friend of mine brought it in, and so I joined in just to help out.
Yeah.
Because indeed we helped out the communities there to make decisions for their city,
Yeah.
and it brings out the best in people. I like that. And there is in Belgium, you say, I like what you say, because you said we can't solve COVID because you're not a doctor or whatever,
I'm not.
but there
Yeah.
was a community of makers in Belgium that did something similar, and there was a few people there that said, okay, we can't do anything, but at the same time, what can we do? And so they in Belgium, for example, like in some other countries, we had no masks because masks were destroyed and
Oh,
we
yeah.
had to problem. So at
Yeah.
some point, they designed a mask that people could create themselves. So they just looked on and they talked with doctors and they talked with people. What's a
Yeah.
good mask that we can create ourselves out of cloths, and how
Yeah.
to do that? And so they designed it, and they created a pattern so that people could sew their own masks and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
they published that and put it for free on the internet, and all. And so that whole group of, and I'm trying to come up with the right name, but I can't, of course, I
Yeah.
cannot come up with the right name for that group. But
Yeah.
they actually did a lot of creative things about what problems around COVID can we solve,
Yeah.
what problems are existing, and what can we do. The
Yeah.
think tank, a Corona think tank, that's how they were called, and
Oh,
they
it's beautiful.
all local things, Belgium.
Yeah.
Well, the mask, I think they even published it in English and in French, so they
Yeah.
published on the internet so other people could do it. But it was, of course, focused a lot on thing, and was multiple things about the fact that people couldn't, how's it called? Well, people were stuck at home. There were no funerals possible, or no real
Oh,
funerals.
yeah.
So they did thinking about how can we mourn, and how could we help people mourn, and how could we deal about that.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
created things around video calling with people, and so how do we teach families to do video calling with people who don't have the resources and things like that.
Yeah.
A lot of different things, and basically what they did is similar to what you're describing. You have a bunch of people with a problem. We have a bunch of creative people that are good at
Yeah.
inventing ideas, and then and bringing the right kind of people connecting to these. So
Yeah. Well,
that's indeed what the agile community is really good about.
we love community. We love creating communities, and sometimes we're stuck as to how. And I think that some people are stuck as to how to do it, right? And I think there's people, like, I know there's people all over the world that are doing it. And I want to bring these communities of people and the people all together and kind of go, can we share what we've done? Like Luke, come share what you've done, and or others who've done it, and maybe we can do it in our own community, for example, right? So there is, so I'm trying to, like, so this particular thing I'm doing, which is, doing things locally, but hoping globally, right? Or bringing hope globally, is creating this bigger community and bringing in the practices that we have as agilists into that. And
Mhm.
here's the other kicker. I've started interviewing a bunch of people, and I'm actually interviewing in a month's time, in May. I'm interviewing a lady who's a counselor in one of our local communities here, and I'm asking her, well, what are your gnarly problems? What are your wicked problems? Right? So she's given me a list of what those problems are. So she's going to give me that stuff. But when I talk to each of these individuals, and it's really interesting when I talk to them and I go, well, how do you solve these? They have techniques that they've been using locally that we don't use.
Exactly.
And it's like, oh, hi. It's like, you do what? Right. And it's like, wow, double-edged sword, or I don't call it double-edged, whatever. But it's the whole thing is we can learn so much from them. Right. And the other thing is that these people they are holding people's lives, and it's reacting right now. Right. It's in them, like, in our corporations and what we're doing, that product that we're dealing with, that impact may not happen right now. Like, sure, we have one-on-one impacts and conversations and stuff like that, but what we're delivering and what we're doing could take 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or some organizations are like 18 months, who knows. But we're trying to get it shorter. But so the impact that they make with their clients or whatever is a lot longer. But when we work with our communities, and when I was talking to the 911 operator, and she does disaster recovery stuff, right? Like, the stuff that she does in that particular space is just, and they don't have like a scrum master or agile coach or whatever. It's like they have to take care of themselves. Like, I go, who does that? Because the police chief, or the guy who's taking care of the whole disaster, he has so many things to think about. He can't make sure that the team is healthy, right? They have to
Mhm.
take care of themselves.
That's
And you're
interesting
going,
because that's what I'm hearing in that. For example, when there is in Belgium, we had lots of floods this year, so there's
yeah,
a lot of people, a lot of problems there. And
yeah,
I heard that the first responders they get support, but of course after it. So they first
yeah,
help out, and then after that weekend or whatever, they get support, they get psychological help, and and
yeah,
sometimes for years, especially if the people. What was it? What is it? 10 years ago now that there was a bomb that exploded in our airports, and
yeah,
there was recently a whole television series about that, and yeah, these people still talk about the support that they got after that, these attacks and stuff like that, and we need to take care of these people, and need to, but like you say, we need to think about that, and we need to debrief them or whatever, do something to take care of
right,
them, because by
yeah.
default and before they would never do that. That's something they needed to learn.
Well, and this is,
um
it's interesting for me. Like, that's like I love solving problems. That's another thing, right? I love that. That's the developer in me. But that there's this aspect of, why do we have to wait till afterwards? Like, why can't we do it during, right? And what is it, as us as agilists could look at that without getting in the way of what, 'cause we're not the firefighters, we're not the whatever, but can we look at the situation and kind of go, maybe we can do this in a different way, right?
mhm,
I don't know, right? I just think of, there's these things that naturally do come, and some things that maybe takes another view at the dynamics of the entire team or whatever, that can make it better. But I just want to bring that tribal kind of instinct that we have into that space where we're taking care of them in the moment, not a day after or whatever, but in that space that's happening there. But I don't know what that looks like, and I know that our friend Lisa is she's getting into a little bit more of that space, when in the it's more of a trauma kind of space, and how we need to be in that particular space, because that takes on a different, thinking and a way of being, right? So and we would need to learn that if we're going into spaces like that. So for me, the wicked agility stuff that I'm doing is
Hmm.
I'm trying to, create those steps so that I can and to bring people into the community more, where they can do things, or they can help the community chip away at problems. And I'm, again, I'm doing it. I'm trying to talk to all these different people about it, and what we can actually do, and interviewing people, and giving a space where people can see, what 911 operators do, and maybe what counselors do, so that they can see that they can be in that space too. I want them to be invited into that space. But then
Hmm.
I also want to harness the knowledge that we have as a community. What else have we done? Right? Like, because I know so many people have done different things, and like, if we could do this locally, and then what can we connect together globally, and I know we can make a difference. That's my hope. That's my drive right now, and it's scary as crap, and imposter syndrome comes in all the time. I can't do it. Like, it's there, right? Oh my gosh, what do you mean no one's going to listen to you? Oh, that's too aspirational, and I go, no, but I know I can do it. I've not talked to council people before. That's scary, right? Like, what do I have that I can offer them? I've got lots. I do, right? And I
I,
know that.
I really
Yeah,
like what you yeah, everything you said, because basically what you're doing is you bring your community knowledge to the different communities that are maybe not yet communities, and you
yeah,
bring all these resources, well, the knowledge from all these different parts together as resources for the people that you want to
yeah,
help out.
yeah,
um it's inspiring, it's scaring at the same time. And
yeah,
I think there's also interesting to see what are these communities already doing, because
yeah,
some of the things, I assume that what the 911 people are doing, they also need to learn from each other. What 911 is doing in the United States is probably completely different from what's happening in Belgium, and how can they learn? And I assume they have their own kind of communities, and we can all learn from each other. Because yeah, we it's like you say, when a crisis is hitting, we first of all we need to take care of the crisis, but that problem, but we also need to stand back and look back at it afterwards and say, what can we learn and how can we next time do better, which is basically a retrospective. And this is probably the only moment where the word post-mortem is really
yeah,
appropriate, because there's somebody died in some of these cases, and how can we avoid some of these things? So that's
yeah, yeah. It's
it
fun
is
to.
powerful work, I think.
Yeah, and it's interesting that I always get wicked. I call it wicked wisdom. Again, I'm using this word wicked like crazy, but I get wicked wisdom, and one of her wicked wisdoms was, you need to share a cookie, eat a cookie, right? Which means
Mm.
you have to look for others, and you also have to take care of yourself,
Yeah,
right? So
that's what I wanted to go at, because that's
yeah,
again what I shared about with the plane. We have to take care
yes,
of ourselves, and we
yeah,
have
yeah,
to deal with that, because otherwise you can't just do it, and you have to at some point. I have a brother-in-law that is a fireman. Actually, yeah, okay, I'm not going to
oh
go
yeah,
into the details, but he's a fireman, and yeah, that's one of the things that was really hard in the beginning, that he had to learn that you still have to take care of your own life first before you can help people. Because
yeah,
if you try to save a person but you die yourself into the process, you
yeah,
cannot help all the other people. And sometimes you have to take hard calls, or as a boss you have to take hard calls about, we're not going to go in, we know there is a person in there, but it's too dangerous for the full team.
yeah, yeah,
And that's yeah, that these are hard calls to make.
yeah,
And that's, luckily for most of us as in agile coaching, that's not the kind of calls we have to do. um
yeah.
but yeah,
I'm interviewing a fire chief too. To go in, a volunteer fire chief to go into that. Yeah, that's interesting. It is, and then I expect that. I don't know if I'll go into that conversation, but yeah, it's
I
real.
would
It's
love
real.
to hear some of these stories. Okay, I want to go, and because after all the stories that you shared, I really
Yeah.
want to know what you consider your biggest achievement. Because I heard so many stories already that I thought, oh, this is probably the answer to that question, or maybe this. And so what are you most proud of in everything that you shared, or anything that you haven't shared yet?
I think that I'm most proud of myself and my ability to continue to keep persevering and trying to make a bigger impact, right? Understanding how I can create a bigger impact.
Hmm.
So I'm really proud of how far I've gone and where I've kind of grown now. Like I say, I've grown like 6 feet because of of how I am standing and what I'm doing, and when I look at, I also think I'm in my biggest achievement right now, and I don't know what it's going to look like, but it really feels like I'm in this space of with the wicked agility work. It feels like it feels like it's that energy, but I don't know what the outcome is. And then in the agile space specifically, I mean, the stuff that I did in the mentorship program was just a beautiful, sweet achievement for me. I loved it, and I'm still continuing to keep doing that. And the impact that it has on others is just wonderful. And I feel so blessed when I hear some of that stuff come back from there. So, but that couldn't all be possible if I didn't learn who Joanne was, right, and what she's capable of doing, and what's holding her back, right,
And growing yourself. So
and
just for
owning my
my rest of
con-
my audience, I just looked up when you say 6 feet, that's 182 centimeters. So I need to look that up because I don't think in that
oh
kind of
yeah,
way of
yeah,
looking and thinking. It's but I did I at first when you said it, I said, okay, I'll look it up later, and then I thought, wait a minute, because I'm not the only one who's using a different way of thinking about
yeah,
sizes. So I didn't. I re instinctively I knew with 6 feet that you meant something that is large, but
yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
that is actually larger than I am. So that would be like, okay, Joanne, where are you? Something like that. So that's so that's
yeah,
definitely is large. Okay,
yeah,
I'm going to go to the next question. I need to select. We talked already about the personal agility, so let's skip that one. Let's go immediately into remote working because we've been
yeah,
doing this in a remote way.
yeah.
I assume that well, in the pandemic, you worked remotely. What did you learn recently or before about remote working? What is something you can share with all of us?
I think it's possible, right? I think there's
Ah, I
yeah.
didn't. That's interesting. That's probably the first time in all these interviews that somebody says it's actually possible. That is something a lot of us learned in the last 2 years.
Yeah, we kept on at the beginning. Everyone was like, "No, we need to be in person. We need to be in person." No, it can work, right? Like it was a gnarly problem, and we figured it out, and we're capable of figuring it out. Like,
Mhm.
yay! We're smart enough to be able to kind of shift to that, to do what we need to do. Um, we shifted to the tool that matched the problem, right? And that's that wisdom I have too. Is we often want to use this tool when we want to. It's more about the tool than it is about the problem that we're trying to solve. No, we need to flip it around. It's the problem we're solving for, which is we need to work at home, right? Okay,
Mhm.
great. What's the tool?
Yeah, and
Okay,
that's the thing.
pull
It's
this tool
what
out. Like, it's not about being agile, right? You're not doing it because you're agile. No, you're doing it because you have to work at home, right? And you need to figure out the appropriate tools that can allow you to do that, right? The problem is that, and we solved it. We did, right?
well, that's the interesting part in agile. The one thing is people over processes and tools,
Yeah,
and but that doesn't mean, and that's something I've been saying for 20 years, and COVID showed it very clearly. That doesn't mean
yeah.
that we don't use tools. Sometimes tools can help us. And
Oh, for
there we
sure.
see a big difference. Of course, when the Agile Manifesto was created, Skype didn't
Yeah,
exist. It was only, I think Skype started in 2004, which is one of the first tools that we were able to talk remotely. And now we have Zoom, we have WebEx, we have Skype, we have so many others. While I'm talking, I think about three, four others, and there's probably tons of
yeah,
others tools that allow us. We record this on Melon, and so there's a lot of tools that are out there that allow us to talk and have video conversations.
yeah,
There's a lot of other things about just about other kind of ways to communicate. that didn't exist 20 years ago. So yes, the tools did help at some point. Again, it's not about the tools, it's about if we see a tool that become better, we will just swap and use a different tool. It's about the problem and looking for which tool can solve it best.
Yeah.
And that's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that was
it's a good to share it, because yes, we sometimes forget even after 2 years. Yes, it is possible. Okay, let's look beyond, and that's it. And I'm collecting. It's funny to share this already, but um I'm working on a document and working on something, because about hybrid work. If you ask people
yeah.
now today about hybrid work, the best answer today is don't do it, because we haven't figured out how to be in person and remote at the same time. We haven't figured it out.
Great
But
problem.
exactly. That's my stance. It doesn't mean it can be done. It just means that we haven't figured it out. So it's a
Yeah.
great problem. It's a wicked problem that we have to look
Yeah.
at. And I'm challenging a lot of people in the agile
Yeah.
community and in the remote community to
Yeah.
think with me and like, okay, what are possible solutions, and how could we figure out a better way of doing it?
Yeah.
Because 20 years ago, the answer to remote work was don't do it. Now
Mm,
we're, like you say, we figured it out. It's possible. We will still figure out better ways in the next years. I'm sure of that. But we already know that it's possible. And
mm,
we have figured out some ways on how to do that. Hybrid work, on the other hand, we haven't figured it out at all, because the current best answer is don't do it. And I don't accept that. I really want to figure out a better way of doing hybrid work. I have no clue what it means, but I know that together it's a nice problem to think about that.
I think the biggest challenge is the reentry. So the reentry into the workplace. So there's a great article that someone wrote about NASA and astronauts reentering into back into society.
Right.
And
Yeah, that's a similar kind of problem.
yeah, and so which is right up my alley, which is about, and we need to worry about that. Like, I mean, hybrid, it's great. I think it can be done on, I'm not so worried about that. That's like, yeah, okay, we can figure it out. I'm sure we can, right? As a team, we can talk about it, and we can talk about all the facets of it, and we can facilitate that. I can bring out all the different tools I have, and but the one thing that I think that is we need to ensure that people feel safe coming back in, right? And that's the part where I think we need to focus on is how we help people in the reentry, right, into the workplace, because
Mhm.
there's people who are scared, like they've been it's this is what the NASA article talks about, is that there's the socialization muscle, for example, that we
Mhm.
have. We stop using it, right? We don't, because we're not used to
Mm.
we're not socializing as much with all these people in a room. And so
Yeah, being in a room with 100 people is scary
yeah,
these days. It's like,
yeah. So
wow.
yeah, so now you have to rework that muscle, right? So that you can do that. So it's a gradual re-entry. It's all around building connection, which, I mean, I love doing that, connecting people together, but do it gradually, not harshly. You just need to be listening. There's a lot of coaching related stuff that needs to happen. And if we don't do that, then you're going to create more fears, right? And you're going to create, you can have people more shut down, and you don't want that as well. So we want to, gently bring people back in. Don't do it harshly, right? But
Well,
the other aspect,
yeah, yeah, I know a few people who are forced to go back in, and
yeah,
there is the forcing part, there is the safety part, but there is also the part of why are we doing it? So
yeah,
I've been 3 days to the office this week,
mm,
and one of the days I was fully into physical meetings with other people. And
yeah,
like you say, it's again really like, okay, there's many people here, so it feels a little bit uncomfortable. We need to get
yeah,
comfortable with that. But there was the other part as well, is that one of these days, earlier this week, I was in the office because I was asked by my client to be in the office, but I was in Teams all day in meetings with people who were not in the office, and was like, why did I spend 2, 3 hours
yeah,
on a train to come back here to be with other people who are not here? So sorry, but that just doesn't make any sense for me. I actually have better tools at home. I have better coffee. I have whatever. I can sleep longer. I don't have to be on a train with hundreds of people who are not wearing masks where they're supposed to wear masks and other kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So that there's the whole that dynamic around that we need to figure out again what how, why and how are we coming back, and there's still a lot to discover there as a
Lots of
society, I would say.
It's lots of conversations, right? And I think it's, I mean, there's we have to respect the companies that we're in and why. There's a reason why they want to do it. But we need to also kind of like bring that into the conversation with the teams, right? Like we have this problem, and be like be open about it, right? Like if it's like, we haven't seen you all, or we feel that by doing this, we're gonna do what? Like what is it that the leader wants to be able to do by having everybody in, right? So
Mhm.
there is a we need to understand and fulfill that, and we need to have a conversation as a group, as a team, as to how best we're going to fulfill that, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly. And that's and it needs to be a conversation with
yeah,
where both parties understand each other. And like I said, the day yesterday that I was in the office with everybody around, that was like I came back, even though I slept a lot less than other days because I had to go back to the office. I came back with a lot of energy because that yeah, that just, even if it's scary at the beginning, it was very
yeah,
interesting and very energetic by
yeah,
working with my colleagues almost face to face. So yeah, that there is a lot of that dynamic. So thank you for sharing, because that's indeed this is one of the things that we will have to work on.
yeah.
We're already very long into this conversation. It's interesting that every time I say in the beginning, this will probably take around that long, it takes a lot longer. So
I know.
I'm
I
sorry
keep
for all the people that keep watching it, but I hope you like it as much as I do. And I
yeah,
want to go to that very last question because I skip a few other questions that we did
that's
already in the
perfect.
middle. I think
Yeah, yeah,
that's that
perfect.
that's that we count that. So that last one that stays around here is that who do you think I should ask next? Who do you want
Oh,
me to
right. So I think I'd like to bring in my very first coach, Mike Edwards.
Okay, so
Um, he
definitely
Yeah. So
tell
Mike
me a
Edwards.
little bit about Mike.
Yeah, so Mike Edwards, he's an agile coach. So he was originally an agile coach. So he's like a leadership executive coach now. And But I've been watching him. He coached me, so he's like one of these guys that I've been watching his footsteps and seeing how he keeps on stepping into a more impactful self, right?
Mhm.
And what I like about Mike is he's stepping into the executive suites, right? So now he's working with a large bank in Toronto, and so he's got all of his tools, right, that he brings with him. So he brings in tools of executive leadership coaching, but agile coaching, agile power teams. Like he's been in that space, he's done that, and he's doing that. And he's just for me. He just shows up big, right? And the part that he has, I'll talk about the responsibility process, and I don't know if you know Christopher Avery
Mhm.
and the responsibility process. So he is also really big on the responsibility process itself, and he lives by example in that specific space. So I just think for him, like for me, when we talk about alter egos and we talk about making that big impact, he really knows. Like he just and he challenges the heck out of me, to grow that much more. So this is like I always think everyone needs a Mike Edwards in their life, like a
Wow.
coach
Okay.
like that in your life. But
That
like,
that's a very nice introduction to him.
yeah, yeah, okay. That's maybe I'll stop it at that. But there's a lot more that's in there. But I think that we need that in order to be big, to be bold, to be brave. We need to be able to step in, and he can provoke that, right? He can actually make that happen. Like he with you as well, but he can help engage that, right? So he's just awesome. So but he's
Good.
also in our space in all these different regards. So I think he's really relatable to us as coaches, right? Or in the agile space.
Great. I hope he will accept this opportunity. So I'll get in touch with you to get his contact details, and then we'll take it from there. Um,
Great.
so leaves me to what that last question. What's a good way for people to reach out to you?
Well, Yeah, so there's a couple places. So definitely the LinkedIn will be a good
Hmm.
place. They can connect with me on LinkedIn, and they'll see all the mentorship program stuff that I'm doing and everything else I'm doing there. So that's good. And then there's a link to information about Wicked Agility. So to be part of the Wicked
Yeah,
Agility community.
and it's a very large URL, so I can't put it on screen
No,
because it would take up the full screen. But I'll put it down into the comments so that people can figure out how they can get in contact with. Because indeed, I already promised you that I would put that link in, but after everything you shared about the wiki problems, like, yeah, that's probably is the first link I should put in there, because that's what people, yeah, it's for you reaching out to the community for what are other wiki's problems,
yeah,
and how people can help out with these things. So that's definitely something to
yeah.
share there.
I want
So
more. I
thank
want
you very
more.
much for your time. It's been as wonderful as a conversation as I thought it would be.
Oh,
I think right after the very first question, I already thought like, okay, this is probably going to be the longest conversation. Uh,
oh
but
no.
I say that with a lot of grace, and
Oh, thank you.
because it was wonderful conversation. Yeah, it's a lot of laughter. We laughed a
Yeah,
lot, both of us. I think we
yeah,
talked very deeply about agility, but also about, well, our children and everything that we deal with and how we learned about ourselves. So for me, it was a very great conversation. So
thank you.
I'm really happy that I invited you, or actually that you were invited. Um, and
Thank you.
so yes, so thank you very much for your time.
Right. And
And
I enjoyed the conversation too. I really did. And I wish we were at, Nashville or something like that. And we're in the conference having this because we would have a drink or something too, I guess. But that was awesome.
that's for sure. Well, like I don't know if I said it on camera, so I'll put it at the end. It will take a lot longer, but okay. So one of the reasons I'm doing this is I want to do to keep connected and to connect to a lot of people in the community, but also do it from my home, because I've decided for multiple reasons that this year I wouldn't go to Nashville or to other
Oh,
conferences.
okay. Yeah.
Um, for multiple reasons, but a lot of it is for personal reasons, to stay with my family. With teenagers, there's definitely a lot going on, and so I decided like this can take a while. This is a long conversation. I have it so my family can't reach out to me at this moment, but once
Yeah.
this is over in like 5 to 10 minutes, I can go back to my family. I can sleep in my own bed, which is different.
Yeah.
If we would have had this conversation in a bar in Nashville, it probably would have been 3 o'clock at night before I went to bed. Didn't sleep much after whatever drinks that we had, and had a hard time getting up in the morning next time. Um, it
Yeah.
would also be lovely, and it would be with a lot of other friends around us.
Yeah.
But this is, yeah, now I can do it with my family around me. So,
Yeah. Beautiful.
and I want to share these conversations with the rest of the community, because for me it feels also like we connect, but we also connect at the same time to the community around us. So that's what I hope, that other people would like it, and so far people seem to enjoy what you're doing with these conversations. So that's nice as well.
I love it. I thank you so much. You make this such an enjoyable conversation. So it's like this wouldn't happen without you asking the great questions and us having this great, like, it's an amazing conversation. I love it. So yeah, I think we could talk for another 3 hours if we wanted to, but I would have had to actually get a drink. But
Well,
anyway, thank
I had
you.
coffee, but I'm out of coffee already for a while. So so I need to think that next time I have a conversation, I'll bring a thermos of coffee next to me so that I can keep it. On the other hand, then maybe the next conversations are 3 to 4 hours, so maybe that's a little bit too long. Anyway,
Yeah,
I want to say goodbye, Joanne. Thank you very much for your time.
you're
I
welcome.
enjoyed it a lot, and indeed, I hope that we will run into each other, well, not this year, but somewhere in one of the next years.
You never know.
Exactly. And if you're in Belgium, feel free. You're welcome. I invite every of my guests to my house once you're in Belgium. So feel free to come here as well.
Love
So
to. Love to. Thank you.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.